Gunshots shattered the quiet Arizona morning before Grace Jamison even realized she was in danger. The sharp cracks echoed across the dry land, sending birds flying into the pale sky as dust rose in frightened spirals. Grace dropped to her knees behind a broken fence rail, her heart pounding so hard she could barely breathe. Only hours earlier, she had been sitting inside a stagecoach, believing her journey west would be calm and orderly. Now the coach lay overturned nearby, one wheel still spinning slowly, and masked riders circled at a distance like predators, deciding when to strike again. Grace clutched her leather travel bag tightly against her chest. She had never held a weapon, never faced violence, never imagined fear could feel so heavy inside her body. At 35 years old, she had lived a careful life in Boston, and surrounded by books and classrooms and polite conversations. The West was supposed to be a fresh start, a place where whispers about her past could not follow. Instead, it greeted her with danger before she had even reached town. Another shot rang out, splintering wood just inches from her shoulder. She pressed herself lower, closing her eyes for a moment as panic threatened to take over. She was alone. The driver had vanished during the attack, and the other passengers had fled across the open land. The silence between gunshots felt worse than the noise itself. Then came the sound of thunder, not from the sky, but from hooves striking hard ground. A rider appeared through the dust like something out of a story told beside a fire. His horse moved fast and fearless, cutting straight toward the danger instead of away from it. What before Grace could understand what she was seeing, the man swung down from the saddle while the horse was still moving. His boots hit the earth with certainty, and his revolver was already in his hand. "Stay low, ma'am," he said, his voice calm and steady. Grace looked up at him, stunned by how young he seemed. He could not have been more than 25. His jaw was strong, his expression focused, and beneath the shadow of his hat, his storm-colored eyes held both danger and reassurance at the same time. A single shot from his gun echoed across the valley. One outlaw fell from his saddle. The others hesitated, surprised by the sudden resistance. "Name's Tucker Ali," he said, without looking at her. "Most folks just call me Tucker." Grace swallowed hard. "Grace Jamison." "Pleasure to meet you, Miss Jamison," he replied, at the faintest smile touching his voice, "though I reckon the circumstances could be better." 2 more shots followed, quick and precise. The remaining outlaws turned their horses and rode off across the dry land, disappearing into the distance as suddenly as they had come. Silence returned, broken only by Grace's uneven breathing. Tucker lowered his gun and finally turned toward her fully. "You hurt anywhere?" She checked herself quickly, surprised to find she was unharmed. "No, just shaken." He offered his hand. His fingers were rough and warm, steady as he helped her stand. Up close, she could see the youth in his face more clearly, and it unsettled her more than the danger had. He looked strong and capable, yet far younger than the sudden comfort she felt simply standing near him. "What's a lady like you doing this far from town?" he asked, while gathering her scattered belongings. "I accepted a teaching position in Tucson," she said, brushing dust from her skirt. "I was meant to arrive today." Tucker glanced at the ruined stagecoach. "That won't be happening now. Town's still 15 miles off, and this place isn't safe to linger." Grace hesitated. "We?" He nodded once. "I'm not leaving you out here." Before she could argue, he lifted her onto his horse with careful strength. Heat rushed to her cheeks as his hand steadied her waist. "I can walk," she protested weakly. "Not that distance in those shoes," he replied. He mounted behind her, his chest firm against her back. "Hold on." The horse moved forward, carrying them across the wide-open land. Each shift of movement brought brief contact between them, And Grace felt an unfamiliar warmth spread through her, despite herself. She focused on the horizon to calm her racing thoughts. "To answer your question," she said after a while, "I came west for a new beginning." Tucker nodded. "Came from Kentucky myself when I was 15. Been making my way ever since." 15. Grace tried to imagine him that young, surviving alone, while she had been studying in quiet classrooms. The difference between their lives felt enormous, yet somehow it did not push her away from him. They rode mostly in silence until a narrow stream appeared ahead. Tucker dismounted and helped her down again, his hands lingering just long enough to make her aware of them. "Not used to riding, are you?" he asked. She laughed softly. "Is it that obvious? Most Eastern ladies sit a little stiffer." With his hat removed, the dark hair fell across his forehead, making him look even younger. Grace quickly turned her attention elsewhere, unsettled by the strange pull she felt. "How much farther?" she asked. "Rattlesnake Springs. Few hours yet. Safe place." The name sounded small and distant, yet comforting after the morning she had endured. As they continued, Grace realized she was leaning slightly closer to him, without meaning to. The awareness frightened her more than the attack had. She reminded herself firmly that he was too young, too rooted in this rugged world. She had responsibilities, plans, and a life built on reason. Still, she did not move away. By sunset, the town appeared ahead, glowing warmly beneath fading light. Wooden buildings lined dusty streets, and lanterns flickered to life as evening settled. Yet relief washed through Grace as Tucker guided the horse toward a welcoming boarding house. He dismounted first and helped her down, his hands gentle but strong. "Mrs. Henderson will take care of you," he said, knocking on the door. A kindly woman answered, greeting Tucker with surprise and warmth. Grace introduced herself and was quickly ushered inside, grateful for the comfort of a safe place. "You'll rest here tonight," Mrs. Henderson said. "You look worn through." Grace turned back toward Tucker, suddenly reluctant to see him leave. "You're not staying?" "Got business to handle," he said, "but I'll check on you in the morning." She wanted to ask him not to go. Instead, she simply said, "Thank you." He tipped his hat and stepped into the evening light, disappearing down the street. Grace watched until he was gone, unsure why her chest felt strangely empty. That night she lay awake, replaying every moment. The gunfire, the ride, his calm voice, the warmth of his presence. She reminded herself again that he was too young and too different from her world. Yet sleep came slowly because the memory of his eyes refused to fade. Morning brought sunlight and the smell of breakfast. Mrs. Henderson mentioned casually that Tucker had already stopped by to check on her. Grace felt an unexpected flutter in her chest. Outside, she explored the town. Children played in the dust, families greeted one another, and life moved with a simple rhythm she had never known before. A young mother introduced herself and spoke about the need for a teacher. The idea settled quietly in Grace's thoughts, surprising her with how right it felt. Later she found Tucker repairing a harness at the livery. His face brightened when he saw her. "Mornin', Miss Jameson." They spoke easily, laughter coming naturally between them. Grace noticed how everyone greeted him with respect. He was not just a wandering cowboy. He belonged here. As they walked through town after visiting the sheriff, Tucker paused near a notice board. "Town dance this Saturday," he said casually. "Good evening for folks." Grace felt warmth rise to her cheeks. "Are you inviting me, Mr. Alley?" He smiled slowly. "I reckon I am." "Then I reckon I'd be delighted." That evening, Grace stared at her reflection in a small mirror. She saw a woman who had run from heartbreak and humiliation, determined never to feel deeply again. Yet color had returned to her cheeks, and hope shone quietly in her eyes. She whispered to herself that it was foolish. He was too young. Nothing could come from this. But her heart did not listen. Saturday arrived bright and warm. Grace dressed carefully, choosing her finest blue silk gown. When she descended the stairs, Tucker waited below in a clean black suit. The look in his eyes when he saw her stole her breath. They walked together to the town hall, where lanterns glowed and music filled the air. People watched with curiosity and approval as they entered. Grace felt shy, yet safe beside him. They danced easily, laughter replacing hesitation. For the first time in years, Grace forgot to guard her heart. Later, beneath a sky filled with stars, they stepped outside into the quiet night. "About staying," Tucker said softly. "I know it's not my place." "And if it were?" she asked. He met her gaze. "Then I'd say the town needs you, and I don't want you to go." Her heart tightened. "I gave my word to Tucson." He nodded, stepping back gently. "Then I won't ask again." When he walked her home, silence wrapped around them. At the boarding house steps, he hesitated. "Grace," he said quietly. "May I?" She lifted her face in answer. His kiss was soft at first, then certain enough to make the world fade away. When they parted, her heart raced with fear and wonder. That night she lay awake again, knowing one truth she could no longer deny. The greatest danger she had found in the West was not outlaws or gunfire. It was falling in love with a man she believed she could never have. The morning after the dance arrived too quickly for Grace Jameson. Sunlight slipped through the thin curtains of her room at the boarding house, warm and gentle, yet her chest felt heavy, as though the night had taken something precious with it. She lay still for a long moment, replaying the kiss beneath the stars. The memory felt both beautiful and dangerous. She sat up slowly and pressed her hands together, trying to steady her thoughts. She reminded herself of facts she trusted. She was 35. She had responsibilities. Tucker Ali was young, rooted in a life shaped by dust, cattle, and risk. Feelings did not change reality, yet her heart refused to agree. Downstairs, Mrs. Henderson greeted her with a knowing smile and a plate of eggs and biscuits already waiting. "You look thoughtful this morning," the older woman said. Grace forced a polite smile. "Just tired." Mrs. Henderson poured coffee and sat across from her. "Town's been talking about that dance." Folks were pleased to see Tucker smiling again. Grace paused. "Again?" The woman nodded gently. "He doesn't let many people close. Life's been hard on him, though he won't say much about it." Grace felt curiosity stir inside her, mixed with a growing tenderness she tried not to encourage. After breakfast, she walked toward the small schoolroom she had been using during her short stay. Children were already waiting outside, their excitement bright and honest. Samuel waved eagerly, then holding up a drawing he had made of letters carefully written across the page. Grace knelt beside him, pride warming her heart. Teaching felt natural here. The children listened closely, eager to learn, grateful for every lesson. The small room filled with laughter and concentration, and for several hours she forgot about choices and departures. When lessons ended, parents gathered to thank her again. Their words were simple but sincere. Grace realized these people truly needed her. The thought followed her as she stepped outside into the afternoon sun. Across the street, Tucker leaned against the livery fence, watching quietly. His hat shaded his eyes, but she could see the softness in his expression when their gazes met. "You're good with them," he said as she approached. "They make it easy," she replied, and he nodded toward the schoolhouse. Kids talk about you non-stop. Haven't seen them this excited about learning before." Grace laughed lightly, though emotion tightened her throat. "They deserve opportunities, and you deserve a place that appreciates you," Tucker said gently. The words lingered between them. Grace looked away first. They walked slowly through town together. People greeted Tucker warmly, and Grace noticed again how naturally he fit into every corner of the community. He fixed broken fences, checked on elderly neighbors, and listened when others spoke. Strength and kindness lived side by side in him. "You do a lot for this town," she said. He shrugged. "Someone has to." They reached the edge of town, where open land stretched endlessly toward distant hills. Wind moved through dry grass, carrying the quiet sound of freedom. Grace folded her hands together. "I leave Wednesday." Tucker nodded, though his jaw tightened slightly. "I know." Silence followed, heavy but unspoken. Neither wanted to break it. That evening, Grace helped Mrs. Henderson prepare supper. The simple rhythm of chopping vegetables and setting tables soothed her restless thoughts, yet every sound outside made her wonder if Tucker might appear again. He did not. Days passed quickly. Grace continued teaching, growing closer to the children and families. Each goodbye felt heavier than the last. She packed her belongings slowly, delaying the moment she would truly have to leave. On Tuesday evening, she walked alone through town as the sun lowered behind the hills. Lanterns flickered to life one by one. She stopped near the livery, and half hoping to find Tucker there, but the space stood empty. A strange ache settled inside her. She began to understand that leaving would not simply mean changing towns. It would mean leaving a part of herself behind. Back at the boarding house, Mrs. Henderson handed her a folded paper. "Came earlier," she said. "Tucker dropped it off." Grace opened it carefully. Inside was a simple message, written in careful handwriting. "Hope your last day teaching goes well. You've done more here in a week than most folks do in years. Safe travels tomorrow. No grand words. No pleas. Just quiet kindness." Her eyes stung unexpectedly. That night, sleep came slowly. She turned again and again beneath the blankets, wondering why Tucker had chosen distance. Perhaps he had accepted reality more easily than she had. Or perhaps he understood what she still struggled to admit. Morning arrived with the rumble of the stagecoach preparing in the street. The town gathered early to see her off. Children hugged her tightly, pressing small gifts into her hands. Parents thanked her with sincere gratitude. Grace smiled and spoke kindly, but her gaze kept drifting down the road. Tucker did not come. Sheriff Bailey helped load her luggage while Mrs. Henderson embraced her warmly. "You'll always have a place here," she said. Grace nodded, unable to speak past the tightness in her throat. She climbed into the coach and took one last look at Rattlesnake Springs. The dusty streets, the small buildings, the people waving goodbye. For a moment, she allowed herself to hope she might see a rider appear. No one came. The coach lurched forward, but wheels rolled across the dry road as the town slowly disappeared behind rising dust. Grace sat straight, hands folded tightly in her lap. She had chosen the sensible path. Miles passed in silence. The rhythm of the wheels felt steady, almost hypnotic. Grace stared out the window, trying to focus on the future waiting in Tucson. A larger school, a proper contract, respectability. Everything she had told herself she wanted. Yet her chest felt painfully empty. 5 miles outside town, the driver suddenly frowned and leaned forward. "Rider coming fast," he muttered. Grace's heart jumped. She leaned toward the window, squinting through sunlight and dust. A horse raced toward them at full speed. Her breath caught. Tucker. He rode hard, determination written across every movement. Dust trailed behind him as he caught up and signaled the coach to stop. The horses slowed reluctantly. Before the coach fully halted, Tucker was already on the ground, breathing hard from the ride. His eyes searched until they found hers. Grace stepped down, her pulse racing. "I thought you weren't coming." He removed his hat, running a hand through wind-tangled hair. "I wasn't going to." She waited, barely breathing. Then I realized I'd regret it every day if I didn't try one more time. The world seemed to quiet around them. Even the wind felt still. "Try what?" she asked softly. Tucker stepped closer, taking her hands gently in his. His palms were warm and steady, despite the emotion in his eyes. "To tell you the truth before you leave." Grace felt tears gather, though she did not yet understand why. "I love you, Grace," he said simply. "I know it's fast. I know it doesn't make sense. I know there's 10 years between us. But I don't want a life where I never said it." Her heart pounded so loudly she could barely hear anything else. "I'm not asking you to stop teaching," he continued. "I'm asking you to teach here. Stay with the town. Stay with me." Emotion rose inside her, tangled with fear and longing. She searched his face, seeing only honesty. "I'm too old for you," she whispered, the words escaping before she could stop them. Tucker smiled softly, brushing his thumb against her cheek. "Then let me be young enough for both of us." His words settled deep inside her, reaching a place she had tried to protect for years. He leaned closer, waiting, giving her time to choose. Grace stood at the edge of 2 lives, her future balanced between reason and feeling. And for the first time, she realized the decision she made in this moment would change everything. Grace Jameson stood beside the halted stagecoach, with Tucker Ali's hands wrapped gently around hers, the dry Arizona wind moving softly between them. The world felt suspended in a quiet moment that demanded an answer. Behind her waited the road to Tucson, a future built on certainty and promises already made. In front of her stood a man who had entered her life like a storm and somehow made her feel safe again. But her heart trembled between fear and hope. "I'm too old for you," she whispered again, though the words sounded weaker now, as if even she no longer believed them. Tucker did not argue or rush her. He simply looked at her with steady warmth, the same calm confidence he had shown the day he rescued her. "Grace," he said gently, "I don't see numbers when I look at you. I see the woman who makes children believe they can be more than they are. I see someone brave enough to start over. I see the person I want beside me when I wake up every morning." Emotion tightened her throat. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. In Boston, admiration had always come wrapped in expectations and judgment. With Tucker, she felt seen instead of measured. The stagecoach driver cleared his throat awkwardly, glancing between them. "Ma'am, well, we ought to keep moving soon." Grace barely heard him. Her eyes remained fixed on Tucker. "You barely know me," she said softly. He smiled faintly. "I know enough. I know how you smile when the kids learn something new. I know you pretend to be stronger than you feel. And I know leaving right now is breaking your heart." Tears slipped down her cheeks before she realized she was crying. For years she had lived carefully, making decisions that made sense, choices that protected her from disappointment. She had come west believing life was something to manage, not something to feel deeply again. Yet standing here, she understood a simple truth. Safety had never made her happy. Love frightened her because it mattered. She turned slowly toward the stagecoach, looking at the luggage that carried her past life. But the driver waited patiently. The horses shifted, ready to continue down the long road. Then she turned back to Tucker. "If I stay," she said, her voice trembling, "everything